I was looking to talk about how military officials have said that they urged Biden against an Afghanistan withdrawal, but Biden claims that he didn't receive this advice. So this is all centered around a Senate hearing which was looking at, obviously, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that the US has conducted recently. Of course, 13 US servicemen died, and also in the attempts to make the kind of exit safe, there was a drone strike which ended up killing a family of 10 Afghan civilians who are actually set to move to the US. And I believe that one of the family members...
It wasn't just random Afghans.
No, they had worked with the US, and their reward, alongside their offer of citizenship, was a drone strike which killed 10 civilians, mostly children as well. So yeah.
That's way worse than I thought it was.
Yeah. So obviously this isn't a great look for the United States. They spoke to General Mark Milley, the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and General Kenneth McKenzie, and they spoke to them for 6 hours yesterday about the Afghan withdrawal, and this was the United States Senate Committee on the Armed Services. Sorry. So before we get to the withdrawal itself, it's worth mentioning General Milley, who is... Exactly. We have covered him before, but I want to quickly go over some stuff because he was talking about his dealings with Trump and other things unrelated to the Afghan withdrawal, which I thought was very interesting, actually. And there's some very important things that can be drawn from what he says. So obviously, in a book recently, he admits to going behind Trump's back and talking to his Chinese counterpart. He claims that he was concerned about Trump going rogue, and in the aftermath of the election, he stated that he had experienced serious mental decline, and he was worried for the safety of the United States, which is obviously ridiculous.
You make it sound like Milley had serious mental decline and started worrying for the safety of the United States. Which, yeah.
I think that's more truthful and accurate, but no, that's what he thought about Trump. So yeah, he was worried about nuclear war with China specifically, and he also spoke to Pelosi privately, without any public knowledge, to try and wrestle the nuclear controls from Trump, which is obviously horrible, treasonous behaviour, going to the Chinese.
Don't worry, I've got the nukes.
Yeah, this is terrible. This is like military court level stuff. So in the hearing, he actually insists that his calls to the Chinese counterpart in the meeting, in which he told generals to alert him if Trump tried to launch a nuclear weapon, were part of his duties as the country's top military officer. So not the commander-in-chief. That's not their role. You know, the president. It's his role to undermine the person that's at the very top. I don't think that's how the military works, is it?
Well, it isn't his head.
Yeah, apparently you've got to be disobedient to the person who is your boss in the military. Anyone who's in the military obviously knows that that's not the case. So
also the guy who ended up getting kicked out for saying that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a S show.
Like stating the obvious, yeah.
Yeah, and he got kicked out of the entire army for that.
Ridiculous.
But Milley literally doing a nuclear coup.
Yeah. So in the hearing, he states, "My loyalty to this nation, its people, and the Constitution hasn't changed, and it never will change as long as I have breath to give." Loyalty to the Constitution? You mean where, President is the commander-in-chief? And he says, "I firmly believe in civilian control of the military as a bedrock principle essential to this republic, and I am committed to ensuring the military stays clear of domestic politics." Well, what exactly was he doing then? When he was going behind the president's back and talking to the Chinese and talking to Pelosi, he should have no business with Pelosi because she's the House Majority Leader, but she's not part of the executive, is she? She's not in the president's office, obviously.
But that's the political realm, exactly what he's saying you must be avoidance of.
Yeah, so he's obviously a massive hypocrite as well as being a traitor, as far as I'm concerned. So we've got an article which has a quote about what Trump makes of General Milley, which I think is always interesting to read out. So Trump states that Milley should be tried for treason if the story is true, which he doesn't deny it's true. He actually says it is true. "For the record, I have never thought of attacking China, and China knows that. And then I'm going to read a full quote from Trump. I wish I could do a decent impression of him, where he says, "The people that fabricated the story are sick and demented, and the people who print it are just as bad." He's on about him, starting a war with China. "In fact, I'm the only president in decades who didn't get the US into a war, a well-known fact that is seldom reported. The good news is that the story is fake news concocted by a weak and ineffective general together with two authors who I refuse to give an interview to because they write fiction, not fact. Action should be taken immediately against Milley, and better generals in our military, of which we have many, should get involved so that another Afghanistan disaster never happens again. Remember, I was the one that took out 100% of the ISIS caliphate. Milley said it couldn't be done." So basically, Trump saying exactly what I was saying, that he's a traitor, and also that he doesn't know what he's talking about, as in saying didn't think you could get rid of ISIS, and then Trump did it. So well done to Trump. Obviously, Milley's not to be trusted, but it wasn't just him being quizzed, of course. So the Republican for Arkansas, the Senator Tom Cotton, confronted Milley and asked, well, if you recommended to Biden that we should keep, a steady 2,500 people in Afghanistan. He explicitly said in this committee hearing that he advised Biden not to withdraw and that it would be a disaster. He says you wanted to keep about 2,500 US troops there, and it could bounce up to about 3,500, maybe something like that, in order to move towards a negotiated gated solution. And Cotton points out that obviously your advice wasn't heeded, and then all this happened. How come you didn't resign? And he says, I can only conclude that your advice about staying in Afghanistan was rejected. I'm shocked to learn that your advice wasn't sought until August 25th on staying past the August 31st deadline. I understand that you're the principal military advisor and that you advise, you don't decide, the president decides. But if all this is true, General Milley, why haven't you resigned? And he says, as a senior military officer, resigning is a really serious thing. It's a political act if I'm resigning in protest. My job is to provide advice, my statutory responsibility to provide legal advice or best military advice to the president, and that's my legal requirement, and that's what the law is.
BS.
Yeah.
The whole thing's BS. Sorry, as a senior military officer, resigning is a really serious thing, which is why you're not doing it, because you're not a serious person. It's a political act if I'm resigning in protest. No, you're taking accountability. You'd actually be taking heat off the president if you did that. If you say, no, this is my fault, don't blame Biden, all the rest of it, I was the one who messed up because I'm the military advisor, that wouldn't be political. That would be, no, you have messed up, you're the individual responsible. No, actually, you staying there is a political act as well, because you're making Biden look worse and worse, and as it's his fault.
But isn't the military politics by other means anyway? Sure. So isn't everything
There's also that.
political?
But if you're trying to make this distinction between the two worlds, then his idea that, if I resign, it looks bad on Biden is obvious BS. And it's just him being like, no, these are my excuses for not taking accountability. I mean, there are a million reasons why this guy should have been fired, either by Trump or actually Biden as well as a hanger offer. But the other point there of him being like, oh no, I'm not getting involved in politics.
It gets much worse than that. So he says
that peed me off a lot.
No, it is ridiculous, isn't it? The president doesn't have to agree with the advice, he says. He doesn't have to make those decisions just because we're generals, and it would be an incredible act of political defiance for a commissioned officer to just resign because my advice is not taken. This country does not want generals figuring out what orders we're going to accept and do or not. That's not our job.
Whoa.
These words are coming out of his mouth after what he did.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. But also the first part there, which is like, well, he doesn't have to take my advice. I'm just a general. And Biden's, what he done with his life?
He's been a senator for 120 years, according to him.
Big military man. Anyway, but there's there's that. But there's also the fact of just, okay, maybe he did make a decision. He had more information than you. But then your advice not being heeded led to the deaths of at least 14 American service personnel who were suicide bombed. Not to mention anyone else who was killed that we don't know about at this point. Not to mention the 10 civilians who were trying to come to the US, who you would guaranteed come to the US. You then drone striked. Not to mention the entire collapse of the Afghan government. This is all your fault. This is not just, well, I advised him one thing and we lost a bit of the front line and it's not a tiny thing at all. You lost the war.
Yeah. So that's more than enough grounds to resign if he so wanted to. His excuse is pitiful. And the fact that he's saying the country doesn't want generals figuring out what orders we're going to accept or not, whilst he went behind President Trump, is
done that.
Appalling. Like, how on earth can he say that with a straight
Obvious
face?
snake, you know.
Yeah. And,
I mean, it's good to know when you've got proof that someone is just an absolute snake. But,
Yeah. But anyway, this isn't even actually the main focus of the hearing.
sorry.
This is just a side thing that I thought was very important to point out. So if we go on to this post-millennial article, which is very good, it's titled, Biden accused of lying after his top generals contradict his ABC interview with on Afghanistan withdrawal. So obviously in this ABC interview, Biden says, well...
So there should be one more link, I assume.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Never mind. It's okay. I've got all the quotes I need anyway. But they spoke to General Kenneth McKenzie, who basically supports the notion put forward by Milley as well, that they should have stayed there. And I mean, I do think, although Milley is a bit of a liar, clearly, that anyone who knows anything about the military, the situation was bad. They should have kept people there. And I know my predictions in the past weren't great, but I've learned the error of my ways about Afghanistan.
I got a different view.
No?
I look at the thing and being like, look, there was Trump's deadline. He moved it back to September 11th for weird satanic reasons, presumably, and because he hasn't given one, and therefore the collapse is on him. Should have pulled out months ago, and the collapse happened while your men were there. That's your fault.
I still think it's Biden's fault, but I think...
But the place was never going to stay stable. Like, we could stay there for another 10 years. Why? For what? But
nevertheless, what they're trying to say here is that they should have kept troops there because it was never going to last, right? And that's what both generals seem to agree on. So General Kenneth McKenzie, apparently not as much of a scumbag as Milley, says, I will give you my honest opinion, and my honest opinion and view shapes my recommendation. I recommended that we maintained 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, which was the same as Milley, and I also recommended earlier in the fall of 2020 that we maintain 4,500 troops at the time. Those are my personal views. I also have the view that withdrawal of those forces would lead inevitably to the collapse of the Afghan military forces and eventually the Afghan government. And then he was asked, did you talk to the president about General Millet's recommendation? He said, sir, I was present when that discussion occurred, and I'm confident that the president heard all the recommendations and listened to him very thoughtfully. So he's saying, yes, these recommendations were passed on to Biden. But Biden says in his ABC interview, so the interviewer says, your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops, and Biden interrupts saying, no, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true. That wasn't true. And he says, they didn't tell you that they wanted troops to stay. And Biden says, no, not in terms or whether we were going to get out in a time frame all troops. That's Biden's own words. It's difficult to read Joe Biden and make sense of it, so sorry. They didn't argue against that, he says. So no one told you, your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the past couple of years. We can do that. We can continue to do that. And Biden says, no one said that I can recall. So either Biden's got a terrible memory, which is perfectly possible, or someone here is lying. I wonder who it might be. I mean, I don't trust Milley. I don't trust Biden.
You got McKenzie. I don't know anything about
him.
Yeah,
I think he seems relatively okay. I don't know too much about him, but he's certainly not nearly as bad as Milley.
I wouldn't be surprised either that it would be true that the military guys were advising just keep a lot of troops there and stay there. Which
it's believable,
was
right?
The status quo.
I mean, that is the position which also certifies their own continued usefulness, right?
It would break the deal that Trump made the United States made with the Taliban. It would also mean that you never leave ever, but I can imagine them making it. So
yeah,
I think Biden's either probably lying or he's misremembering, which both of them are pretty easy to believe.
But because these kinds of things go on for a long time and they're not very interesting to go through, this is going to get a little bit overlooked. But it is important to hammer home these two things, that General Milley is a liar and a traitor and a backstabber and a hypocrite, and that either the generals or Biden are lying about who is to blame for the Afghanistan withdrawal, because someone is, and they're not clearly.
They're just fighting each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one final thing, which is quite amusing, is that Elizabeth Warren came out.
Pocahontas has something to say.
So she spoke about this hearing on MSNBC last night, and she said that it was actually an amazing undertaking. It was done under chaotic circumstances because the government had collapsed, because the army had melted away, the Afghan army, and that even in the midst of all that, our military was able to get about 124,000 people out, and they left no American-owned equipment behind. They managed to execute that, and yes, it was a risk. We lost a young woman from Massachusetts. I'm working now on getting the Congressional Medal of Honor for the people who we lost right at the end, but we knew it was a risky undertaking and the military performed. We should be proud of President Biden and proud of our military. What world is she living in?
Just deluded. I mean, number one, no military equipment was left behind.
You can literally see it in the videos made by the Taliban. They have the rifles, the uniform, also, all of the equipment, the vehicles.
How does the Taliban now have the third largest air force on planet Earth? Like, how did that happen?
They just had it hiding in the caves.
Yeah,
you know?
They had it the whole time. Whatever.
It's so absurd.
But also, we should be proud of President Biden and proud of our military.
What?
I mean, we
should be ashamed.
We be proud of the American military in the sense that they did their evacuation. The upper brass and all the rest of it obviously completely goofed the whole situation. But then again, they're being commanded by the commander-in-chief, who ultimately takes all decisions and on this regard, and also takes all the blame, which he should. And therefore, to be proud of him for what?
I think the only people who are blameless in this are the people who are actually the boots on the ground.
Yeah, I don't have any say anything.
Yeah, exactly. You should be proud of them, and the people that died to get other people out. Yes, that's obviously something to be proud of.
The emperor, the man who's totally the president of the United States. That's the one to be proud of.
Ugh, what's wrong with these people?
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can catch the full podcast at 1 p.m. every weekday UK time at lotuseaters.com. You can also sign up at lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, that's how we keep this whole operation running. And recently we've put up loads of great stuff, such as this interview with legendary comedian Steve Hughes, one of my personal favourite comedians, so it was a real honour to be able to meet him. But one thing that I didn't expect, that he would be such a deep thinker, and this podcast is genuinely like a meeting of minds in a way. He was right on my wavelength on a bunch of things and helped me actually connect a bunch of dots, but I'm not going to carry on and spoil it. We also, of course, have lots of interesting articles that have been written, such as this one by Josh about the dumbest country on earth. And for for silver tier subscribers, we also include a link, so it's we have an audio reading of it from a chap called Jonathan, who has a very smooth voice that you will enjoy. And this is great because often I don't have time to read all of the articles we put up, because we've put up a lot of regular content. And so this saves me the hassle of having to read it myself. So I really actually am very appreciative of this feature on a personal level. But we also do the Contemplations and Epochs, which are just interesting podcasts about interesting things. These are regular weekly podcasts. So this one is one of our writers, Josh, he's got a master's degree in psychology, talking about theories of intelligence and how they matter. And of course, we've got the Epochs, where myself and Bo, or in this case it was Josh and Bo, talking about the life of Sir Francis Drake. So that's 2 solid hours talking about England's most notorious adventurer. But we've also got lots and lots of other ones. This is number 21, so there's a good back catalogue there. And finally, we have our book clubs, and this is the part that I'm most proud of. Recently, we've done Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell, and
Reflections on a Ravaged Century by Robert Conquest.
Yeah, Robert Conquest is fantastic. Just if you want Western chauvinist historian, he's your man.
Anti-socialism.
Yes, in all forms, it's fantastic. And like I said, that's what keeps the podcast running. So if you want to become a member, thank you very much, and we think there's some great stuff you'll enjoy.